The letter trembled in my hands, the Yale crest gleaming under the fluorescent lights of my bedroom. My heart raced not from joy, but from the weight of a memory that wasn't supposed to exist yet. I'm Sarah Mitchell, and I've just received my guaranteed early admission to Yale, the kind of dream that kids in Boston's Lincoln High School spent sleepless nights chasing. But I'd been here before, not in some deja vu haze, but in a life where I gave it all up for Ethan Carter, my childhood friend, only to watch him tear my world apart. If you're new to my story, hit that like button and subscribe to join me on this wild ride of second chances. Trust me, you'll want to stick around to see how this unfolds. Ethan and I grew up on Maple Street, our houses facing each other like mirror images, windows close enough to toss a baseball across. He was the kid with the messy brown hair and a laugh that could make a rainy day feel like summer. We were inseparable, building forts in my backyard, trading Pokemon cards under the streetlights, promising to conquer the world together. By high school, that promise zeroed in on Yale. We'd sit on my porch, swing SAT prep books, splayed out, dreaming of Gothic arches and football games in New Haven. Sarah, he'd say, will be unstoppable, his hazel eyes sparkling with ambition. I believed him. I believed in us. But then came Lily Harper. She waltzed into Lincoln High junior year, her violin solo at the homecoming assembly stealing every heart in the auditorium, including Ethan's. Her auburn hair caught the stage lights like fire, and her confident, untouchable smile made her seem like she'd stepped out of a movie. Ethan was hooked, his focus shifting from calculus to late-night calls with her. His grades, once neck and neck with mine, started to slip. By senior year, his SAT scores barely scraped 1,200 while I was clocking 1,500s and a national physics competition win. That's when the Yale letter came, a golden ticket to everything we'd dreamed of. But Ethan's scores wouldn't get him close, and Lily's were even worse. She was headed for a state school, maybe UMass if she was lucky. I couldn't let him fall behind. We'd made a pact, hadn't we? So I did the unthinkable. I marched into Principal Rivera's office, my voice steady despite the knot in my stomach. Give my Yale spot to Ethan, I said. He was second in the physics contest, only 5 points behind me. He deserves it. The principal raised an eyebrow, but I pushed on. My grades are solid. I'll ace the regular admissions. Ethan needs this more. It was the kind of sacrifice you make for someone you've known since you were 6, someone who carried your books when you were too weak from asthma to walk home. I thought it was loyalty. I thought it was love. But Ethan didn't see it that way. Months later, he found my journal at a coffee shop near Boston University where I'd ended up instead. I'd left it on the table during a study break, its pages filled with doodles and confessions I'd never meant for anyone to see. Not love letters, just thoughts how I admired Ethan's drive, how his smile made my heart skip when we studied late, how I hoped he'd notice me the way he saw Lily. He stormed over, journal in hand, his face twisted with disgust. You're pathetic, Sarah, he spat, voice low but sharp enough to cut. You gave me Yale to sabotage me and Lily. You knew her scores were trash, so you pushed me to New Haven to keep us apart. You're jealous, manipulative, and honestly, you make me sick. I froze, my latte turning cold in my hands. Ethan, I just wanted you to have a shot. He threw the journal at my feet, pages fluttering like broken wings. He said, I wish I'd never met you, and walked out. The coffee shop's chatter faded to a hum, and I stood there stunned as the boy I'd known forever became a stranger. I couldn't explain that I'd given up Yale for him, not against him. I couldn't make him see the truth, and that was just the beginning. Years later, Ethan climbed the ranks of a Silicon Valley startup, and his charm and Yale degree opened doors I'd never touched. I was stuck in a dead-end marketing job at a Boston tech firm, my physics passion buried under spreadsheets. Then came the drone project pitch. My boss dragged me along to present our tech to a potential partner, Ethan's company. He sat across the conference table, his suit crisp, his smile cold. Sarah's untrustworthy, he told my boss, his voice dripping with authority. Her personal conduct makes collaboration impossible. He didn't stop there. He leaked lies online claiming I'd sold company secrets to competitors. The internet exploded, trolls called me a traitor, doxed my address. A mob showed up at my parents' house, screaming accusations. My dad, a mechanic with a temper, swung a wrench to drive them off and broke his arm in the scuffle. Mom collapsed at the grocery store during a confrontation, a stroke stealing her life in minutes. 2 years later, Dad lost to grief, took his own life. Ethan didn't just ruin me, he erased my family. I was alone, drifting through a haze of regret, wishing I could undo that one choice. And then somehow I did. I opened my eyes back in my bedroom, and the Yale letter was in my hands in my senior year. My breath caught tears pricking my eyes. This wasn't a dream. I was back. And this time, I wouldn't let Ethan's choices or his love for Lily drag me down. I'd take my future, let him crash and burn, and maybe, just maybe, find a way to heal. If you're feeling that fire for Sarah's comeback, drop a comment below. Tell me, would you give up your dream school for a friend? And don't forget to hit that subscribe button to catch how Ethan's world unravels. Let's dive into this rebirth together. The sunlight streamed through the tall windows of Lincoln High's main hallway, casting long diagonal shadows across the scuffed linoleum floor. I stood there, my backpack heavy on one shoulder, the Yale letter folded tightly in my pocket. My hands trembled not from the cold Boston morning, but from the impossible truth sinking in. I was back. Senior year 2018 was the exact moment I received my early admission. My heart pounded, memories of my past life crashing over me like a tidal wave, Ethan's betrayal, my family's ruin, the years of regret. I sniffled fighting tears, my fingertips brushing the letter's crisp edge. This time I'd keep it. This time I'd choose myself. A voice snapped me back to reality, low and commanding, laced with that familiar confidence I used to admire. "Sarah, I can't walk home with you today." It was Ethan Carter striding down the hallway, his Letterman jacket slung over one shoulder. His hazel eyes caught the light, but all I saw was the future, his cold glare, as he threw my journal, his lies that destroyed my life. A wave of nausea surged my stomach, twisting with a deep, unshakable fear I couldn't suppress. I subtly stepped back, hiding the unease behind a tight smile. "Sure, Ethan," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "No problem." He blinked, surprised at how easily I agreed. In my last life, I'd have protested, maybe teased him about ditching me, hoping he'd change his mind. But not now. I knew where this path led and wanted no part of it. Ethan hesitated, his brows furrowing as if he sensed something off. "Tomorrow, then," he said, almost like a promise. "I'll walk you home tomorrow." Before I could respond, a sharp voice cut through the hallway's chatter. "Ethan, come on! Are we going or not?" It was Lily Harper leaning against a locker, her auburn hair tied in a loose braid, her green eyes flashing impatiently. She wore a cheerleader's jacket, her presence magnetic, drawing glances from passing students. Ethan shot me a glance, then jogged toward her, his sneakers squeaking on the floor. I watched him go, my chest tight. "Stay as far from me as possible," I whispered under my breath, the words a vow. In my previous life, I'd have swallowed the hurt, trailed after him like a loyal shadow, hoping he'd remember our pact. But not this time. The Ethan I'd known, the one who'd built snowmen with me in 5th grade and snuck me extra fries at the school cafeteria, was gone. Replaced by someone who'd trade our friendship for Lily's smile, then blame me when it all fell apart. I turned away, weaving through the crowded hallway, the chatter of senior year buzzing around me. Lockers slammed, laughter echoed, and someone's phone blared a pop song before a teacher barked to turn it off. Lincoln High was alive, pulsing with the chaos of kids on the cusp of freedom, college apps, prom plans, SAT retakes. But for me, it was a battlefield. Every step was a chance to rewrite my story and dodge the mistakes that cost me everything. I passed the trophy case where my name gleamed on a plaque for the national physics competition. That win had gotten me Yale a ticket out of this suburban grind, and I wouldn't let it slip through my fingers again. Outside, the crisp October air hit my face, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and diesel from the school buses idling nearby. I pulled my hoodie tighter, my mind racing. In my last life, Ethan and Lily's romance had consumed him. He'd skipped AP Physics study groups, blown off SAT prep, and let his grades tank all for her. I'd tried to pull him back, asking about homework, offering to quiz him, but he'd shut me out, his phone glued to his hand, texting Lily with that stupid, lovesick grin. And when I gave up Yale for him, thinking I was saving our dream, he'd turned it against me, accusing me of jealousy, of sabotage. The memory burned sharp and bitter. I stopped at the edge of the school parking lot where kids piled into cars or headed to the bus stop. A group of jocks tossed a football, their laughter loud and carefree. I envied their lives untouched by the kind of betrayal I'd lived through. My fingers brushed the Yale letter again, grounding me. This was my second chance, a reset button on a life that had spiraled into darkness. I thought of my parents, Dad's calloused hands from years at the garage, Mom's tired smile after night shifts at the hospital. They didn't deserve the pain Ethan's revenge had brought them. This time I'd protect them. I'd defend myself. As I started walking home alone, the familiar route felt different. Maple Street stretched ahead, lined with red brick houses and maple trees ablaze with autumn color. Ethan's house stood across from mine, its blue shutters unchanged, but the sight of it made my skin crawl. In my last life, we'd passed notes through our windows using a makeshift pulley system he'd rigged with a fishing line. Those days were over. I quickened my pace, the crunch of leaves under my sneakers a steady rhythm. Ethan could have Lily, his so-called first love, his white moonlight. I'd have Yale, my future, and the strength to walk away. When I reached my front porch, the nausea had faded, replaced by a quiet resolve. I unlocked the door, the familiar creak of the hinges grounding me in this new reality. Inside, the smell of Mom's lasagna lingered from last night's dinner. I dropped my backpack and sank onto the couch, pulling out the Yale letter. Its words were a promise, a lifeline. Congratulations, Sarah Mitchell. This time I wouldn't let anyone, not Ethan Lilly, or my soft heart, steal it from me. I closed my eyes, the weight of my past life lifting just a fraction. Tomorrow I'd face Ethan again, but I'd be ready. I'd be different. The autumn breeze swept through Maple Street, rustling the fiery orange leaves piled along the sidewalk. I stood on my porch, the Yale letter tucked safely in my backpack, my breath visible in the crisp Boston air. My eyes drifted across the street to Ethan Carter's house, its blue shutters glowing under the late afternoon sun. The sight stirred memories I couldn't shake, memories of when Ethan and I were more than neighbors, when we were each other's anchor, in a world that felt too big for two kids from a sleepy suburb. In this reborn life, I wanted to bury those memories, but they clung to me like the scent of Mom's apple pie cooling in the kitchen. We'd grown up together, Ethan and I, our lives braided tight as the friendship bracelets we swapped in third grade. Back then, we were unstoppable. I could still see us at Lincoln Elementary's field day, our sneakers pounding the grass as we raced the 100-meter relay. Ethan crossed the finish line first, spinning around to high-five me, his grin wide enough to show the gap where he'd lost a baby tooth. "We're the champs, Sarah," he'd shouted, and I'd laughed, my ponytail bouncing as we collapsed onto the field, the crowd's cheers ringing in our ears. Those days were when winning meant everything, when a ribbon and a shared Slurpee from the corner store felt like the pinnacle of glory. Middle school wasn't as kind. My asthma flared up, landing me in the hospital more times than I could count. I'd lie in that sterile bed, the beep of monitors my only company, feeling like the world was moving on without me. But Ethan was there. He'd sneak past the nurses, his backpack stuffed with textbooks, and sit cross-legged on the visitor's chair explaining algebra with the patience of a saint. He'd say, "You've got this, Sarah," sketching parabolas on a napkin, his voice steady even when I wheezed through my answers. He'd stay until Mom arrived from her nursing shift, her eyes soft with gratitude. Ethan didn't just help me pass, he made me feel like I wasn't alone. By high school, we were a team again, acing our PSATs and setting our sights on Yale. The summer before sophomore year, we sprawled out at the 4th of July barbecue in my backyard, the air thick with the smell of grilled hot dogs and sparklers. Ethan leaned back on the grass, his hands behind his head, staring at the star-streaked sky. "Yale, Sarah. That's our ticket out of here," he said, his voice low but electric. Imagine us arguing about physics in those lecture halls and cheering at Bulldogs games. I clutched my root beer, my heart swelling. "Deal," I said, clinking my bottle against his. "Yale together." I could already picture myself in a navy hoodie, my hair dyed a rebellious streak of purple, yelling my lungs out at a football game. Ethan laughed, his eyes crinkling. "Purple hair, your mom'll still call you classy." I shoved his shoulder, giggling, the future bright as the fireworks above. Those moments weren't just memories. They were promises. We'd mapped out our path: AP classes, SAT prep, college apps, each step a brick in the road to Yale. I'd lie awake at night, scribbling in my journal about how Ethan's drive pushed me to be better, how his laugh made the stress of exams bearable. It wasn't love, not really, just admiration for a boy who matched my hustle, who saw the same horizon I did. But that summer, the pact felt unbreakable. We were two kids from Maple Street, ready to conquer the Ivy League side by side. Now, standing on my porch, I felt the weight of how that dream had shattered. Ethan met Lily Harper in my last life, and our pact unraveled. She'd swept into Lincoln High like a storm, and he'd chased her, leaving our plans and me behind. I'd given up Yale for him, thinking I was saving our future, but he'd turned it into a weapon, blaming me for his failures. The memory of his disgust, his icy words, "You're pathetic," Sarah, cut deeper than I wanted to admit. I gripped my backpack strap, the Yale letter a reminder of what I'd almost lost again. This time, I wouldn't let nostalgia blind me. Ethan wasn't the boy from field day anymore. He was a choice I'd never make again. I turned and stepped inside the warmth of the house wrapping around me. Mom was in the kitchen humming as she chopped onions for dinner. "You okay, sweetie?" she called, glancing over. I nodded, forcing a smile and just thinking about school. She didn't know about my past life, about the pain waiting down the road if I let Ethan pull me back in. I climbed the stairs to my room, the creak of the wood familiar grounding. Dropping my backpack, I sat at my desk, the Yale letter staring up at me. This was my second chance, my shot to rewrite the story. Ethan could have Lily, his first love, his obsession. I'd have Yale, my family, and the life I deserved. The halls of Lincoln High buzzed with the chaos of senior year lockers, slamming sneakers, squeaking, the faint hum of a pop song leaking from someone's earbuds. I weaved through the crowd, my physics textbook tucked under my arm, the weight of my Yale letter still fresh in my mind. It was October 2018, and I was reborn, armed with the knowledge of a future I'd never let repeat. But Ethan Carter was slipping, and I could see it in every distracted glance, every missed study session. Lily Harper had swept into his life like a whirlwind, and he was letting her pull him under. Lily transferred to Lincoln High in junior year, turning heads with a violin solo at the homecoming assembly. The auditorium lights framed her like a star, her auburn hair glowing, her bow dancing across the strings with a grace that silenced the room. Even I clapped, caught up in the moment, though I dove back into my AP notes the second it ended. Ethan, though, was lost. He'd sit in the cafeteria, ignoring his burger, to watch her laugh with the cheer squad, his eyes tracking her like she was the only person in the world. His SAT prep books gathered dust, his grades sliding from A's to C's. Once we'd stayed up until midnight quizzing each other on physics formulas, but now he was skipping AP classes to drive Lily to her violin lessons. I tried to pull him back. One afternoon in the library's quiet corner, I slid a practice test across the table. "Ethan, have you done the physics set yet? I'm stuck on question 10, the one about torque." He barely looked up, his phone buzzing with Lily's texts, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Ask Mr. Thompson tomorrow," he muttered, thumbs flying. "I'm kinda busy." He leaned back, chuckling at whatever she'd sent, then stood yanking his backpack. "Gotta go. Lily's waiting." The library's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and I watched him leave the boy who'd once promised Yale, now a stranger chasing a girl who didn't even take AP classes. I sighed, flipping open my textbook. I wasn't chasing Ethan anymore. I threw myself into my studies, spending late nights under my desk lamp, solving equations until my eyes burned. My hard work paid off. I won the national physics competition. My name was in the Boston Globe's education section, and I got a gold medal on my bulletin board. The Yale early admission letter arrived soon after, and its words were a lifeline. "Congratulations, Sarah Mitchell. We are pleased to offer you guaranteed admission." I clutched it, imagining lecture hall's lab coats the roar of a Bulldogs game. But Ethan's future was crumbling. His SATs barely broke 1,200, nowhere near Ivy League territory, and Lily's were even worse. UMass was her best shot. One day, I overheard Mr. Thompson's low voice passing the teacher's lounge. "Ethan Carter's tanking. His physics scores are a mess, barely passing. That Harper girl's got him distracted. He won't make a 985 school at this rate." Ms. Rivera sighed. Meanwhile, Sarah's killing it. #1 in the grade, Yale bound. She's unstoppable. Their words hit like a punch. I thought of Ethan's gap-toothed grin from elementary school, the way he'd sketched parabolas by my hospital bed. We'd made a pact, Yale together. I couldn't let him throw it away, not when he'd come so close to me in that physics contest, just 5 points behind. I stood outside the principal's office, my heart pounding. The door was heavy oak with a brass nameplate, Principal Rivera. I knocked, my voice trembling but firm. "Ms. Rivera, I need to talk about my Yale spot." She looked up, surprised, her glasses perched on her nose. "Sarah, what's wrong?" I took a breath, the words spilling out. "Give my spot to Ethan. He was second in the physics contest. He's got potential, but his grades... He needs this more than I do. I'll be fine with regular admissions." She frowned, leaning forward. "Sarah, this is Yale. Are you sure?" I nodded, picturing Ethan's face when we'd sworn our pact at the 4th of July barbecue. "I'm sure. He's my friend." I walked out, my chest tight, not with regret, but with hope. I thought I was saving him, but I wasn't. Ethan took the spot, and I enrolled at Boston University, a solid school, but not Yale, which was not my dream. I told myself it was worth it, Ethan would thrive, and our friendship would hold. I was wrong. He drifted further, consumed by Lily, and I buried myself in BU's lecture halls, trying to ignore the ache of what I'd given up. The sacrifice wasn't just a college, it was a piece of who I was, a spark of the physicist I'd wanted to be. And Ethan, he'd soon make me regret ever believing in him. The Boston University lecture hall smelled of chalk dust and coffee, its tiered seats filled with students scribbling notes. I sat near the back, my laptop open, but my mind was elsewhere. It was spring 2019, and I'd traded Yale for Boston University, a good school, but not the dream I'd fought for. I'd given my guaranteed admission to Ethan Carter, thinking I was saving our childhood pact, thinking he'd understand the sacrifice. Instead, I was here studying marketing, a major I'd picked to play safe, not because it sparked anything in me. Physics. My real passion felt like a ghost haunting my notes, and equations I'd once loved are now buried under case studies and ad campaigns. I told myself it was worth it that Ethan was thriving at Yale, that our friendship would endure. I was wrong. It started at a coffee shop off campus, a cozy spot with mismatched chairs and the hum of an espresso machine. I was cramming for a midterm, my journal on the table, a worn notebook where I'd scribbled thoughts since high school. Not love letters, just fragments, how Ethan's focus in our late-night study sessions had pushed me to work harder, how his laugh made AP physics bearable, how I'd catch myself smiling when he explained a formula with that spark in his hazel eyes. I didn't love him, not like that. I admired him, the boy who'd once matched my drive, who'd promised we'd conquer Yale together. But I'd left the journal unguarded when I stepped away to grab a refill. Ethan found it. He'd come to Boston for a Yale BU debate club meetup, and there he was standing by my table when I returned my journal in his hands. His face was twisted, not with the warmth I remembered, but with something cold, venomous. "You're pathetic, Sarah," he said, his voice low, slicing through the coffee shop's chatter. "I read it. All of it. You liked me and gave me Yale to sabotage me and Lily." My stomach dropped and the air sucked out of the room. "Ethan, no, that's not—" I started, my voice shaking. He cut me off, holding up the journal like evidence in a trial. "You knew Lily's SATs were garbage. You pushed me to New Haven to split us up. You're jealous, manipulative, and honestly, you make me sick." The words hit like a slap. I stood frozen, my latte cooling, the shop's warmth turning suffocating. "Ethan." "I gave up Yale for you," I said, barely above a whisper. "Because we promised." He threw the journal at my feet, its pages fluttering open on the worn wooden floor. "I wish I'd never met you." He spat, his hazel eyes hard, unrecognizable. He turned and walked out, the bell above the door jingling as it slammed shut. I sank into my chair, my face burning, as nearby students glanced over, their whispers like static. I couldn't explain, not to him, not to anyone. The boy I'd known since we were kids, who'd high-fived me at field day, who'd sat by my hospital bed, was gone. In his place was a stranger who saw my sacrifice as a scheme. I picked up the journal, its spine creased, my words exposed. I wasn't in love with Ethan, I'd never written that. I'd admired his fire, his ambition, the way we'd pushed each other toward Yale. But he'd read what he wanted, twisted my feelings into a motive to hate me. I thought of Lily Harper, her violin solos and cheerleader charm, how she'd pulled Ethan away from our pact. I didn't blame her, she was just a girl like me navigating high school. But Ethan's choice to see me as the villain cut deeper than I'd expected. It wasn't just the accusation. It was the loss of someone I'd thought understood me, someone I'd given up my dream for. In the following weeks, I threw myself into BU's routine lectures, group projects, and late-night study sessions in the library. But the spark I'd felt solving physics problems was gone. Marketing felt like a cage, each assignment a reminder of the path I hadn't taken. I'd call Mom sometimes, her voice warm, asking about my classes. "You're doing great, Sarah," she'd say, but I could hear the exhaustion from her hospital shifts. I didn't tell her about Ethan or the journal. I didn't want her to know I'd given up Yale for someone who now despised me. I saw Ethan once more that semester at a BU Yale tailgate. He was with Lily, her arm looped through his, laughing under the autumn sun. He didn't look my way or acknowledge the girl who'd handed him his future. I turned away, joining my BU friends, forcing a smile. But inside, I was unraveling. I'd sacrificed my dream for a friend who'd turned on me, and I couldn't undo it. Not yet. Not in that life. But in this reborn one, I'd ensure Ethan's choices returned to haunt him, not me. The Boston skyline glittered through my office window, but I barely noticed. It was 2023, 4 years after I'd given up Yale for Ethan Carter, and my life was a shadow of what I'd dreamed. I worked at a tech firm in downtown Boston, pushing marketing campaigns for products I didn't care about. My desk was cluttered with coffee cups and client briefs, a far cry from the physics labs I'd imagined at Yale. I'd chosen marketing at BU for stability, not passion, and every day felt like a compromise. My real love physics equations, the thrill of solving the universe's puzzles, was buried, a regret that gnawed at me. But Ethan's betrayal, his words in that coffee shop, "You're pathetic." Sarah had only been the beginning. His revenge was coming, and it would cost me everything. Ethan had thrived at Yale, and his charm and degree had landed him in Silicon Valley. By 2023, he was a rising star at a drone startup, his face on tech blogs, his network sprawling. I'd followed his rise from afar, hoping he'd at least made my sacrifice worth it. But he hadn't. Our company was pitching a new drone project, and my boss, Mr. Kendall, brought me along to present the tech specs, knowing my physics background. The client, Ethan's company. I walked into the conference room, my slides ready, only to see him across the table, his suit sharp, his smile colder than a Boston winter. "Sarah's untrustworthy," he told Mr. Kendall, his voice smooth but cutting. "Her personal conduct makes her a liability. We can't work with her." My boss frowned, but Ethan doubled down, hinting at ethical concerns without proof. I stood there, my face burning, unable to defend myself, as Mr. Kendall nodded, trusting Ethan's Yale pedigree over me. That was just the start. Ethan didn't stop at humiliating me. He took to social media, posting cryptic threads about a former friend who'd sold company secrets to competitors. He didn't name me, but the tech community connected the dots. My ex profile was flooded with hate trolls calling me a traitor, a sellout. Someone dixed my family's address and posted it in a forum with a call to get answers. A mob appeared at our Maple Street house shouting accusations through megaphones. "Traitor." They yelled their signs, bobbing in the dusk. Dad, a mechanic with a temper, grabbed a wrench and charged outside, swinging to drive them off. One of them shoved back, and he fell, his arm snapping against the porch steps. I rushed to him, my heart pounding, as Mom called 911, her hands shaking. The fallout didn't end there. The online hate spilled into real life. At the grocery store, a stranger confronted Mom, a nurse who'd worked double shifts to put me through BU. "Your daughter's a disgrace," the woman spat, pointing. Mom argued back, her voice rising until she clutched her chest and collapsed. A stroke, the doctor said later, was triggered by stress. She died in the hospital, her hand cold in mine. I sat by her bed, numb, the beep of the monitors echoing the ones from my childhood asthma days. Dad spiraled after that, his grief swallowing him. 2 years later, he took his own life, leaving a note, "I can't go on without her, Sarah. I'm sorry." I found him in the garage where he'd once taught me to fix bikes, but he's now silent. I was alone, drifting through a haze of loss. My job was gone. Mr. Kendall fired me after Ethan's stunt, citing reputational risk. The online hate hadn't stopped. Every login brought new insults, new lies. I locked myself in my apartment, the Boston skyline mocking me through the window. I'd given up Yale for Ethan, thinking I was saving our pact, our friendship. Instead, he'd destroyed my family, my career, my life. I'd lie awake, replaying that coffee shop moment, his disgust, my journal at my feet. If I could do it over, I'd stay far from him, let his choices bury him. And then, impossibly, I got that chance. In my senior year, I woke up in 2018 with the Yale letter in my hands, my parents alive, and my future unwritten. In that reborn moment, I stood in my bedroom, the familiar creak of the floorboards grounding me. Mom is humming in the kitchen, and Dad's laughter is coming from the living room. Tears pricked my eyes, not just from relief, but from rage. Ethan's betrayal cost me everything, but I'd keep my Yale spot this time. I'd protect my family, and I'd let Ethan and Lily crash on their own. I folded the letter, my hands steady, and slipped it into my backpack. The world outside was alive, kids shouting, cars honking, the promise of a new day. This was my second chance, and I wouldn't waste it. Ethan's first love, his white moonlight, could have him. I'd choose myself, and I'd make sure he felt the weight of his own mistakes. The flames curled around the edges of my journal, its pages blackening in the backyard fire pit. Each word I'd written about Ethan Carter, his drive, his laugh, our Yale pact, turned to ash, carried away by the October breeze on Maple Street. I stood there, the heat stinging my cheeks, my breath steady for the first time since waking up in this reborn life. It was senior year 2018, and I'd burned the last tether to my past mistakes. No more pining for the boy who'd betrayed me, who'd blamed me for his failed love with Lily Harper, who'd ruined my family. This time, I'd keep my Yale admission, protect my parents, and let Ethan face the consequences of his choices. Lincoln High was a whirlwind of senior year chaos, prom posters plastered on lockers, SAT retake flyers littering the halls, the air buzzing with college dreams and teenage drama. Gossip about Ethan and Lily spread like wildfire. My friend Nick said they're the prom king and queen, totally meant to be nudging me in the cafeteria as he munched on fries. I glanced at Ethan's table where Lily leaned into him, her cheerleader jacket bright under the fluorescent lights. His arm was around her, but his eyes looked tired, not the spark I remembered from our physics study nights. I said they're a good match, shrugging, my voice cool. Let them do what they want. Nick raised an eyebrow. You're chill about it. Thought you and Ethan were tight. I smiled faintly, biting into my apple. Not anymore. I threw myself into school, my desk piled with AP physics notes, my nights spent under the glow of my lamp solving equations until my wrist ached. The National Physics Competition medal hung on my wall, a reminder of the Yale letter in my drawer. I wasn't just studying, but rebuilding the future I'd lost. One afternoon, I ducked into a coffee shop near school to escape the chilly Boston drizzle. The place smelled of roasted beans and cinnamon, its wooden tables scratched from years of student study sessions. I was puzzling over a torque problem when a voice broke my focus. Can I join you, Lucas Bennett, our class president, his dark eyes that are sharp but warm and a chemistry textbook tucked under his arm? Lucas was a mystery, quiet, driven, always a step ahead. He'd earned Yale admission through a National Chemistry Award, and his name was alongside mine in the Boston Globe. I nodded, pushing my notes aside. Sure, plenty of room. He slid into the seat across from me, his hoodie damp from the rain. Congrats on Yale, he said, his smile genuine but guarded. You too, I replied, meaning it. We fell into easy talk, AP classes, college plans, the pressure of senior year. He mentioned growing up in foster care, bouncing between homes until he landed with a family who pushed him to excel. No one handed me anything, he said, stirring his coffee. Every test, every award, that's mine. His grit reminded me of the old Ethan without the arrogance that had crept in with Lily. Have you ever given up something big for someone? Lucas asked, his tone casual but probing. The question hit close, stirring memories of my past life, giving up Yale, losing everything. I met his gaze, my voice steady. Not this time. He nodded, a flicker of respect in his eyes. Good. Some people don't deserve it. We studied together that night, his dry humor cutting through my tension. If we bomb Yale, we're opening a food truck, he joked, sketching a molecule on his napkin. I laughed, the sound surprising me. I felt lighter for the first time since my rebirth, like I wasn't carrying the weight of Ethan's betrayal alone. Over the following weeks, Lucas and I became a team, late-night study sessions at the coffee shop, quizzing each other on formulas, debating quantum mechanics over greasy pizza. He wasn't just smart. He listened, challenged me, and made me feel seen without confessing my reborn secret. I thought of my past life, how I'd clung to Ethan, hoping he'd notice me the way he saw Lily. That Sarah was gone, burned away with the journal. Lucas wasn't a replacement. He was a new path I hadn't seen coming. As I walked home under the maple trees, their leaves blazing red, I felt the Yale letter in my pocket, a promise I'd keep. Ethan could have his prom queen love story. I had my future, and maybe, just maybe, a friend who'd earned my trust. The library at Lincoln High smelled of old books and pencil shavings, its long tables scarred from years of student stress. I sat in a corner, my AP physics notes spread out, the Yale letter tucked in my bag like a talisman. It was November 2018, a month into my reborn life, and I was determined to hold on to my future. But Ethan Carter was spiraling, and part of me, the part that remembered our childhood pact, still ached to pull him back. I pushed it down. In my last life, helping him had cost me everything. This time, I'd let him fall. Gossip about Ethan and Lily Harper was inescapable. They're glued at the hip, Nick whispered in history class, passing me a note. He's tanking his grades for her. I glanced at Ethan across the room, his head bent over his phone, texting under the desk, while Mr. Thompson droned about the Civil War. Lily sat nearby, twirling her auburn hair, her cheerleader jacket slung over her chair. Their prom king and queen vibe was the talk of Lincoln High, but I saw the cracks Ethan's tired eyes, his untouched SAT prep book. I could have nudged him like I did before with a, "Hey, you studying for the physics quiz?" But I didn't. I kept my eyes on my notes, my pen moving steadily. His choices weren't my burden anymore. Then came the hospital call. Ethan caught me in the hallway, his voice urgent, his Letterman jacket wrinkled like he'd slept in it. "Sarah, I need a favor," he said, his hazel eyes searching mine. "Lily's dad was in a car accident. He's at Boston General. Your mom's a nurse there, right? Can you ask her to check on him?" My stomach twisted, memories of my past life flooding back. I'd said yes before, but I begged Mom to monitor Lily's dad, thinking it would help Ethan. It hadn't. Their relationship crumbled under her family's financial strain, and he'd blamed me, his hatred fueling years of revenge. I met his gaze, my voice calm but firm. "No, Ethan, that's not my responsibility. It's between the adults." His face hardened, a flash of disbelief crossing it. "You're serious? You won't help?" I shook my head, stepping back. "You've got Lily. Focus on her." I turned and walked away, my heart pounding but my resolve solid. I joined Lucas Bennett in the library, his chemistry textbook open, a half-eaten donut on a napkin. He looked up, his dark eyes catching my tension. "You okay?" he asked, pushing his glasses up. I nodded, sliding into the seat across from him. "Just Ethan being Ethan." Lucas smirked. "Let me guess, Lily drama?" I laughed, the sound easing the knot in my chest, something like that. Lucas and I spent the afternoon tackling practice problems, his dry humor keeping me grounded. He said that if we flunk Yale, we're selling hot dogs at Fenway, doodling a molecule in the margin. I grinned, grateful for his steadiness and foster kid grit that mirrored my reborn determination. He didn't know my secret, but he didn't need to. He was a partner, not a project, unlike Ethan had been. As we packed up, Lucas glanced at me. "You didn't cave to Carter, did you?" I shook my head. "Not this time." By spring, college decisions rolled in. Lucas and I got our Yale confirmations, our names set for the class of 2023. Ethan and Lily, weighed down by their low SATs, his barely 1200, hers lower, ended up at a state school, UMass Amherst. Classmates whispered at prom, where Ethan and Lily wore crowns under the disco ball. "He threw away Yale for her," Nick said, sipping punch. "Love over ambition." "That's bold." Lucas, standing beside me in a rented tux, snorted. "Bold's one word for it." "Stupid's another." I smiled, watching Ethan and Lily dance their smiles, bright but fragile. "They made their choice," I said, my voice steady. "Let them live with it." I walked outside, the night air cool against my prom dress, the stars bright above the Boston suburbs. Lucas followed, his hands in his pockets. "Have you ever wondered if they'll crash?" he asked, his tone curious but sharp. I thought of my past life, Ethan and Lily's breakup, his revenge, my family's ruin. "They will," I said, my eyes on the sky. "And I won't be there to pick up the pieces." The music from the gym faded, and I felt free, the weight of Ethan's future no longer mine to carry. Yale was waiting, and so was the life I'd fight for. The Yale campus sprawled before us, its Gothic arches and ivy-covered walls like something out of a dream. Lucas Bennett and I stood on the quad, our acceptance letters tucked in our bags, the August sun warming our faces. It was the summer before first year 2019, and we'd come to tour the university that would shape our futures. The air buzzed with possibility, students tossing frisbees, professors hurrying to lectures, the distant cheer of a Bulldogs practice game. I breathed it in, my heart swelling with a pride I hadn't felt before when I'd given up this chance for Ethan Carter. This time, Yale was mine, and I was free of the boy who'd betrayed me, whose obsession with Lily Harper had cost me everything. Lucas nudged my shoulder, his dark eyes glinting with mischief. "Ready to be a Yaley, Sarah?" he asked, adjusting his glasses. I grinned, the weight of my reborn resolve settling into place. Born ready. We wandered through Sterling Library, its stained glass windows casting rainbows on the floor, and sat in on a physics lecture, the professor's chalk-scratching equations I couldn't wait to solve. Afterward, we took a road trip to Cape Cod, a pre-college adventure to celebrate. The beach stretched endlessly under the stars, the ocean's rhythm steady as we roasted marshmallows over a bonfire. Lucas laughed, his foster kid grit softened by the moment. He said that if we flunk out, we're opening a clam shack here, tossing a stick into the fire. I laughed, the sound free, untethered. For the first time, I wasn't looking back at Ethan, at the pain of my last life. Back in Boston, I heard whispers about Ethan and Lily. They'd both landed at UMass Amherst, their SATs his barely 1200, hers lower, locking them out of the Ivies. Their prom king and queen romance, once the envy of Lincoln High, was unraveling. Lily's family was struck when her dad's car accident led to medical bills they couldn't pay. Her father's small business, a local hardware store, went bankrupt, and their house was foreclosed. Lily started leaning on a wealthy senior at UMass, a guy who offered cash to cover her dad's care. Ethan found her texts and late-night messages, which she hadn't hidden well. "I gave up everything for you," he shouted, his voice echoing in their dorm's standard room, students glancing over. Lily lit a cigarette, her green eyes cold. "You can't pay my bills, Ethan. That's reality. I heard this story at a Yale tailgate, the air thick with the smell of grilled burgers and the crowd's roar." Nick, my high school friend now at BU, leaned against a cooler, shaking his head. "Ethan's a mess," he said, sipping a soda. "He followed Lily to UMass, tanked his grades, and now she's with some rich dude. Love over ambition, huh?" I shrugged, watching the Bulldogs score, the crowd erupting. They chose their path. Lucas beside me in a Yale hoodie snorted. "Path more like a cliff." I smiled, but a flicker of unease stirred. In my last life, I'd tried to help Lily's dad, thinking it would save Ethan's future. It hadn't. Their breakup fueled his hatred, his revenge destroying my family, mom's stroke, dad's suicide. This time I'd stayed out of it, but the echo of their collapse felt too familiar. Lily's pragmatism didn't surprise me. She'd always been sharp, her violin solos and cheerleader charm a mask for a girl who knew how to survive. But Ethan couldn't see it. He'd romanticized her, his white moonlight blind to her flaws until they broke him. Their fight spilled over in the UMass quad, her voice cutting through the autumn chill. "You love the idea of me, Ethan, not the real me," she said, flicking ash from her cigarette. "I need money. You don't have it. End of story." He stood there, trembling, his dreams of a perfect love crumbling. By the end of the semester, they were done. Ethan ranked in the bottom 20% of his class, and his scholarship was at risk. I returned to my Yale dorm that night, the campus quiet, the streetlights casting long shadows. My room was small but cozy, physics textbooks stacked on my desk, and a photo of Lucas and me at Cape Cod was pinned to the wall. I sat on my bed, the mattress creaking, and thought of Ethan's fall. In my last life, his breakup with Lily had turned his anger on me, blaming my Yale sacrifice for their distance. Now he had no one to blame but himself. I opened my laptop, diving into a quantum mechanics problem set, the equations grounding me. Yale was my world now, lectures, labs, late-night debates with Lucas. Ethan and Lily were fading, their high school glamour just a memory. I'd chosen my path, and it was leading somewhere bright. The Yale lecture hall hummed with the scratch of pens and the soft clatter of laptops, the professor's voice weaving through quantum field theory. I sat near the front, my notebook filled with diagrams, the thrill of physics pulsing through me. It was sophomore year spring, 2021, and I was deep in my element, mentored by a Nobel laureate who saw my potential. But even here, Ethan Carter's shadow lingered in this new life. During a break home in Boston, he showed up at my doorstep, his face gaunt, his hazel eyes hollow. "Sarah, I messed up," he said, standing on my porch, the Maple Street maples budding green. "Lily and I broke up. Why didn't you stop me?" I stood frozen, the spring breeze cool against my skin, memories of my past life flooding back, Ethan's betrayal, his lies that cost me my family. In this life, I'd let him choose Lilia and crash at UMass, but his desperation now stirred a flicker of guilt. I pushed it down, my voice cold. "You think I owed you that, Ethan? You chose Lily, chose UMass. Own it." He flinched, his hands shoving into his jacket pockets. "My dad's sick," he said, voice cracking. "Cancer. I don't know what to do." The words hit hard, a new twist in this timeline, unlike my last life where his dad was okay. For a moment, I saw the boy who'd sat by my hospital bed explaining algebra. But that boy was gone. I sighed, softening just enough. "I'll tell Mom to check on your dad at the hospital. She's a nurse. She'll do what she can. But your choices. They're yours, Ethan. We're not friends anymore." His face fell, but I shut the door, my heart pounding. Inside, Mom was in the kitchen, stirring marinara, her apron dusted with flour. "Who was that?" she asked, glancing up. "Ethan," I said, texting her about his dad. "Don't get involved beyond that." She nodded, her eyes curious but trusting. I climbed to my room, the familiar creak of the stairs grounding me. Ethan's plea couldn't pull me back. I'd learned my lesson. Back at Yale, I threw myself into research, working late in the physics lab, the hum of equipment a steady comfort. Lucas Bennett was there too. His data science projects overlapped with my quantum experiments. He'd become my anchor, his foster kid resilience a mirror to my own reborn strength. One night, as we calibrated a laser, he tossed me a granola bar, his glasses reflecting the lab's fluorescent lights. He said, "You look like you're carrying the world," his tone half joking, half concerned. I told him about Ethan's visit, his dad's illness, and my refusal to fix his life. Lucas nodded, leaning against the lab bench. You did the right thing. He's got to face his own mess. You're not his keeper. We worked until dawn, the lab's quiet broken by our laughter over a botched experiment, Lucas joking. We'd blow up New Haven if we weren't careful. His presence steadied me, a reminder I wasn't alone. But Ethan's texts kept coming, apologies, please, questions about my mom's help. I ignored them, my phone buzzing unanswered on my dorm desk. I thought of my last life, how I'd begged Mom to monitor Lily's dad, hoping to save Ethan's future. It had backfired. Their breakup had fueled his rage against me. This time I'd drawn a line, but his dad's illness gnawed at me, a loose thread in my resolve. By summer, Ethan's life was unraveling. Nick visiting Yale for a debate tournament filled me in over coffee in New Haven. Ethan's a wreck, he said, stirring his latte. Lily's with that rich guy now, and Ethan's failing classes. His dad's chemo isn't cheap, and he's working odd jobs to help. I sipped my coffee, the bitter taste mirroring my mood. He chose this, I said, but my voice wavered. Nick raised an eyebrow. You okay? You and Ethan were close, I nodded, staring out the window at the bustling Yale campus. That was a long time ago. I returned to my dorm, the New Haven streets alive with students and summer heat. My room was cluttered with physics texts and a photo of Lucas and me at Cape Cod, our smiles bright against the ocean. I opened my laptop, diving into a research paper, but Ethan's face, gaunt, desperate, lingered in my mind. In my last life, his hatred had destroyed me. Now his pain was his own, but the echo of our childhood friendship, those days of high fives and hospital visits, made letting go harder than I'd expected. I closed my eyes, the hum of the dorm's AC steadying me. Yale was my future, Lucas, my present. Ethan was the past, and I'd keep him there no matter how much it hurt. The Boston tech firm's office buzzed with the hum of computers and the clink of coffee mugs, its glass walls reflecting the city skyline. It was summer 2023, and I'd graduated from Yale, landing a physics role at Quantum Dynamics, a startup pushing quantum computing boundaries. My desk was cluttered with research papers and circuit diagrams, the thrill of solving real-world problems, reigniting the spark I'd lost in my past life's marketing grind. Lucas Bennett, now a data scientist, worked across the hall, and his dry humor was a constant in our late-night coding sessions. This was my world rebuilt from the ashes of my previous life's ruin, where Ethan Carter's betrayal had cost me my family, my career, everything. But now Ethan was back, slipping into my turf like a ghost I couldn't escape. I spotted him among the new interns, his familiar hazel eyes darting nervously in the lobby. He'd used my name to get the job, a bold move after I'd cut him off in sophomore year. My assistant Mia hesitated when I asked about the hires. No official connections, but you'll see, she said, her tone uneasy. I nodded, my face calm, but my mind racing. Ethan here in my domain. I remembered my past life, his lies, the doxing, my parents' deaths. He thought he could waltz in banking on our old friendship. He was wrong. I greeted the interns in the conference room, my voice steady, professional. Welcome to Quantum Dynamics, I said, scanning the group. You've got 2 days to complete your assigned module. Files are in your inboxes. Please show us what you can do. Ethan's face paled, his hands fidgeting with a pen. The others, MIT grads, Caltech prodigies, nodded confidently, their resumes gleaming. With his UMass degree and spotty transcript, Ethan looked out of place, a high school star faded to mediocrity. I assigned him a coding task, basic for our standards, but a stretch for someone who'd barely passed his classes. 2 days later, the interns submitted their work. The MIT Kids module was flawless, coded in hours. The Caltech grad was elegant, optimized. His submission was incomplete and riddled with errors. I overheard him in the break room, his voice strained. Can you look at my code? He asked a fellow intern, sweat beading on his forehead. The guy frowned. It's an evaluation, man. Helping's not allowed. The disdain in his eyes was sharp. Ethan didn't belong, and everyone knew it. He'd fallen too far behind his UMass education, no match for the Ivy League rigor the others brought. I called the interns into my office, a sleek space with a view of the Charles River. They stood in a line, Ethan on the far left, his shoulders slumped. I flipped through their reports, my expression neutral. Good work, everyone, I said, nodding to the group. Except you, Ethan. Your module's incomplete and the code's a mess. You didn't pass. His head shot up, eyes wide with panic. Sarah, I turned in everything after the first task. I worked hard, I cut him off, my voice cold but calm. Hard work doesn't close a gap you created years ago. You took too long and the quality's subpar. And let's be clear, you used my name to get this internship without asking. I let it slide, but that's where my generosity ends. The room went silent, the other interns exchanging glances, some hiding smirks. Ethan's face flushed, his hands trembling. You're doing this on purpose, he said, his voice rising. You set me up to humiliate me. Why, Sarah? What did I do to you? I leaned back in my chair, the leather creaking, and met his gaze. You humiliated yourself, Ethan. You walked in here thinking our past would save you, but you can't keep up. You chose Lily, chose UMass, and decided to let your grades tank. This is the result. I paused, letting the words sink in. Clear your desk, security will show you out. He stood frozen, his eyes flashing with a mix of rage and despair, the same look he'd had in my past life when he threw my journal at my feet. The interns filed out some muttering thanks, others avoiding Ethan's gaze. One whispered, Thanks, Sarah, drinks on me tonight. Ethan lingered, his voice low, almost a growl. You're cruel, Sarah. You've always been evil. I didn't flinch. No, Ethan. I'm just done cleaning up your messes. Goodbye. Security arrived, their radios crackling, and escorted him out, his footsteps heavy on the polished floor. I turned to the window, the Charles River glinting under the summer sun. Lucas poked his head in his glasses, slightly askew. You okay? He asked, leaning against the door frame. I nodded, a faint smile tugging at my lips. Better than okay. In my last life, Ethan's revenge had left me jobless, my family destroyed. Now I'd turn the tables not out of spite, but because he'd earned his failure. I sat back at my desk, opening a quantum algorithm file, the numbers grounding me. This was my life now, my work, passion, and future. Ethan was gone, and I was finally free. The Boston air carried the sharp bite of winter, the streets decked with Lunar New Year lanterns glowing red against the snow. It was February 2025, and Lucas Bennett and I had come home from our jobs at Quantum Dynamics to celebrate with family. Maple Street was quiet. The maples bare their branches, etched against the gray sky. I walked arm in arm with Lucas, his scarf loose around his neck, his dark eyes bright as he teased me about my terrible snowball aim. You're a physicist, Sarah, and you can't hit a mailbox, he said, dodging my playful shove. I laughed, the sound free, a far cry from the girl who'd once carried the weight of Ethan Carter's betrayal. This was my life now, my career, love, and second chance. We entered a corner store to grab snacks, the bell jingling. The place was warm shelves stocked with chips and sodas, the hum of a TV playing short, mindless videos in the background. Then I saw him, Ethan, behind the counter, scanning items with mechanical precision. His hazel eyes flicked up, meeting mine, and for a moment panic flashed across his face, like he hoped I hadn't seen him. He looked different, thinner, his hair unkempt, the confidence that once lit up Lincoln High gone. He kept his gaze low, bagging a customer's groceries in silence, his hands moving fast as if speed could erase his presence. I stood frozen, the weight of my past life, his lies, my parents' deaths clashing with this humbled version of him. Lucas squeezed my hand, his voice low. You okay? I nodded, my throat tight. Didn't expect this. We paid for our snacks, Ethan's eyes avoiding mine as he handed me the bag, his fingers brushing the receipt. I stepped outside the cold air, a shock after the store's stuffy warmth. Lucas wrapped an arm around my waist, pulling me close. Feeling sorry for him, he asked, his tone gentle but probing. I looked back at the store, Ethan's silhouette bent over the counter. No, I said, my voice steady. He chose his path. In my last life, I'd given up Yale for him, and he'd destroyed me. Now he was a cashier. His dreams faded while I'd built a life I loved. Back at my parents' house, the smell of Mom's dumplings filled the air, Lunar New Year decorations brightening the living room. Lucas and I sat on the couch, my parents laughing over old stories with neighbors. Later, as we washed dishes, Lucas leaned close, his voice a whisper. That story I told you in high school about a senior giving up his college spot, I made it up to test you. I smiled, drying a plate, the memory of his question. Would you give up your spot sharp in my mind? I know, I said, kissing his cheek. You're not that subtle. He grinned, his eyes crinkling, and pulled me into a hug, the warmth of his arms a promise of everything we'd built. I drove to Quantum Dynamics, the Boston skyline sharp against the dawn on Monday morning. My office was alive with possibility quantum computing projects, a team of engineers buzzing with ideas. I led a new initiative designing algorithms that could reshape tech, and my physics passion was alive in every line of code. My assistant Mia popped in. "The latest hires are ready, Sarah. Want to meet them in the lobby?" I nodded, grabbing my tablet. "Give me 5." I glanced at a photo on my desk, Lucas and me at Cape Cod, our smiles bright against the ocean. My life had started over, not just reborn, but reclaimed. Ethan faded into rumors, a cautionary tale whispered at high school reunions. Nick, now a BU grad, mentioned him once over coffee. He's still at that store, never left Boston. Kinda sad. I sipped my latte, the taste grounding me. He made his choices, I said, echoing the resolve I'd held since my rebirth. Ethan's fall wasn't my revenge. It was the natural end of a path he'd paved with obsession and blame. I thought of my past life, mom's stroke, dad's suicide, the pain of his lies. Now my parents were alive, laughing over dumplings, and I had Lucas, my work, a future I'd fought for. As I walked to the lobby, the hum of the office filled me with purpose. The new hires stood eager, their faces bright with potential. I smiled, ready to guide them just as I'd guided myself through this second chance. Ethan was gone, a shadow of a boy who'd once meant everything. My life reborn was mine, and everything I'd dreamed it could be.